Okay, so I'm Michael Justice. I have court on the 26th of October for an incident that occurred on September 19th at about 1 p.m. where I got stopped driving, I should say, traveling in my private automobile on Route 50 in Cleves. I got stopped by the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department. And he stopped me because I had expired plates, which I feel like was a violation of my Fourth Amendment rights to be um, safe and secure in my private plate, places and effects, personal places and effects, and also the 14th Amendment, um, and also the 8th Amendment and the 5th Amendment. But so whatever the deal is, when he stops me or whatever, I started exercising the rights the best I could, as fluently as I could, based on the way I interpret and understand the Constitution. And I think that he ultimately got a little aggravated with that whole idea and immediately decided he was going to just go ahead and impound my private property without due process. So I made it to court twice already. First one was arraignment, which of course, that judge per magistrate tells me that if I get my license and stuff taken care of before the next court date, she'll dismiss the charge, which is kind of cool. It's probably a pretty good little plea bargain, right? But again, it didn't help me with the fact that I need to get my private automobile back out of the impound, and they were still trying to leave me liable to the paying for it to get out of the impound, and she's going to dismiss the charge. That basically should have means that the truck should have never been impounded in the first place. And so they're depriving me of my private property, and with me being disabled and on fixed income, I don't have that kind of monthly allowance to get it out of the impound. I can't incur any more charges because the last time this occurred to me, which was about a year or two ago, um, Covington, Kentucky, made contact with me that I didn't want, and when I started exercising my constitutional rights there about not having to, um, talk to the cop because I really didn't want to. Like I was like, I was like garbage picking, and I didn't want to converse with the cops. I mean, I really just I don't trust the police. So, and that's the reason I try to like study the Constitution and understand what I can and can't do or get away with. And from my understanding of it back then was that I didn't have to I didn't have to speak with that cop because I wasn't operating a motor vehicle. I was sitting in my motor vehicle, but I wasn't operating it. It was sitting in a parking spot. And the engine was off, and so I didn't really think that I had to speak with that officer. And so when I started to let him know, hey, I'm a rights advocate for myself personally, and I don't feel like I need to speak with you. Well, that cop went hands on immediately. Immediately, and impounded me, impounded my truck, impounded my dog, and so all three of us, I had to get all of us out of the impound with my check, which came up close to the first of the month. I was able to get myself out, get my dog out of the impound, and get my truck out of the impound, which they neglected my rent at that time, and because of that, I ended up getting evicted. So it rendered me homeless, and then from that point on, I've been homeless, and here I am. I just found me a new place of residency, and I've been living here, and I haven't had any company or anything like that. I've been sitting here by myself, going stir crazy. So I started going out to Lawrenceburg, Indiana, to a place where I felt was making me happy to do so, and I knew that the tags were expired. I didn't know that they were fictitious, but never mind the situation. I didn't think that that would ever be a scenario because the cop didn't have any real reason to be behind me running my place in the first place, which I felt like the Fourth Amendment rights violation. So when he did actually make contact with me and stuff like that, and I let him know straight up, like, hey, I don't think you should have been running the plates anyways, just because you were bored. I didn't ask for you to run my place. I didn't do any. I wouldn't break the speed limit, and I wasn't doing anything else unlawful for him to run that plate unnecessarily. And I had been traveling with this vehicle for quite some time. Actually, I've had it even since the time I was homeless. Like it was the last car that I bought, but I just recently became the rightful owner of it, like based on a negotiation that I made with the person that was loaning it to me for such a long time. He said, "Well, you've had it this long. He said you might as well just keep it and just give me X amount of dollars per month that you can until it's paid for." And so we agreed on that. Well, I didn't have none of the paperwork or nothing like that with me because I live in a high crime area. The truck doesn't lock. It's only a $500 piece of crap truck. But whatever the deal is, like, um, the I think that we have due process rights, right? And you're supposed to go in front of a judge, let them determine whether you're guilty or not. Well, the cop basically on the side of the highway, he found me guilty by taking my vehicle from me. He stole my car from me because he figured, you know what, you're guilty. He made that decision for himself without a judge or anybody else. He has officer discretion, which I think is wrong. And this is the reason I don't trust our system. So whatever the deal is, like, here I am jumping through the hoops. I already made 2 court dates, and I got me a public pretender. And the public pretender, he acts like he's listening to me, he's hearing me out, and he's trying to, I guess it seems like he's trying to help me, but at the same time, I can hear the intimidation in his voice. He just called me this morning, and he's telling me that, well, I have to let you know all of the do's and don'ts and the pros and cons. He says that if you fight this case, we have to represent it in front of the court a certain way. And he says, now, Judge Mallory, which is the judge that got my case down here in downtown Cincinnati, Ohio, he says, Judge Mallory, he says he's not going to want to hear a whole bunch of this, that, and the other. He says, and that this carries up to 30 days in jail. He says, now, if they come out with a plea bargain again, he said, my suggestion is you probably go ahead and take the plea bargain. He said, but that's just my honest opinion. He says, but, that's up to you. He said, but if you want to fight it, we'll fight it. Or if you think you wanted to get a different attorney, you can get a different attorney. Now, if that doesn't sound to me like he's intimidated just as much as I guess he wants me to be intimidated, when does that become unlawful for us to get our fair rights and our fair trial by the courts? Like, if you're going to give us a public pretender, shouldn't he be as confident, especially when you're exercising your constitutional rights, your God-given, unalienable constitutional rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? When do we get to understand differently? Like, I know for a fact I'm not stupid. Even though I'm on disability for mental health, it's because I am high-risk suicide. My father committed suicide. My grandmother committed suicide. Okay, on my father's side. So it runs in our I guess hereditary. I want to say it's hereditary. Our mental health is hereditary for us. So, but it's not because we're stupid. Maybe it's because we're actually woke. Maybe it's because we're understanding that this system that we live in is like a matrix of idiocracy. It's literally that if you comprehend it, but if you argue it, how freaking dare you? You're a POS. You're a nobody. You're mental health. You're already discredited. And it's like, is it really me or is it really them? Because I understand. I interpreted it to be what it is. It says no law shall be passed that contradicts basically our rights, our God-given rights, our unalienable rights by God and by the law of the land. And we, under the Freedom of Movement Act, the rights to travel says that we don't have to have the driver's license. We don't have to have the insurance. We don't have to have any of these other nonsense because we're not driving, we're traveling. The difference between the two of them is driving is acting, doing business or commerce for the state, for the city, being the straw man, we're driving our automobile because we are citizens acting in commerce for the government. I disavowed the government a long time ago. When they started, when I became more of a victim to a system that's not supposed to be making laws and statutes that deprive us of our constitutional rights, I disavow the system because the common law, the law of the land, this is where it became when kings and queens and whatnot was running the world, is that a law is not a law unless there's a victim. So you can't be banking laws up that are basically victimless crimes, because it's like if you can get somebody for jaywalking, don't you think that's kind of ridiculous? And you can get somebody for, and okay, but then I guess I'm a hypocrite too, because what if a person is out recklessly driving? Maybe they should be stopped and given a warning, so that maybe that fear keeps them from continuously doing this, because that way they might not hurt somebody eventually. You know what I'm saying? Because they're worried about driving recklessly. Yeah. So I get that, but when you're going to start and use the same tactic against somebody, that is driving with or traveling with an expired license plate, I think you're abusing your authority, because especially given the circumstances. I told them I'm going through a hardship. I'm on mental health disability, and that I'm on a fixed income. And all of this domino effect of hardship that I'm going through is because of the government. It's because of the system, you know? And there's absolutely zero advocacy for anybody like myself that's ever gone through something similar to this. So, what are we supposed to do? If we can't complain, which we have a right to our grievances, right? We have a right to address our grievances to our elected officials, to the government. And I can promise you, I've searched every channel known to man, at least online, you know, and even the Bar Association and I've gone to city council meetings and spoke up about these instances. And it doesn't matter who I go and see or who I go and talk to, I'm completely discredited like as if I don't exist. Now, would you still buy into or pay into or trust a system that literally makes you feel like a freaking nobody? Because if you're willing to at least stand up, and I have been, I got a big mouth, so I figured, you know what? I'm going to fight for this all the way around. And I've been fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. And I get more victimized by the system I'm fighting for us, the people, than I've ever done any real criminal activity in my life. You know, I've had traffic violations is about the only thing I've ever really had. Okay, so I'm not a criminal, but they're willing to put me in jail for exercising my constitutional rights in front of the courts because it's not what they want to hear. Just let me know what you guys think in the comments or whatever. But I mean, I'll follow up more and more about this all. But if there's any advice or anything that anybody wants to give me, feel free to give it to me. I like it. Talk to you guys later.